Hey YouTube, this is Peck Tech. Now, one great thing about attending conventions is the ability to go see panelists that might be experts in fields that maybe you're interested in learning more about. This year was no exception, and they had one panel where everybody was up there speaking, and I decided to film it in full to share with you guys. So without further ado, here's the all speakers panel at the Big Fish Deal.
I want to reintroduce Larry Johnson, Joey Mullen, Shane Linder, and our discussion this morning is going to be moderated by our very own Rachel O'Leary. So we're happy to have everybody here. Hope everybody has some good questions and wants to learn more about the hobby and learn more about our great speakers that we have. Also want to thank the Aquarium Club of Lancaster County who's sponsoring our panel discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rachel and we'll get started.
Excellent. As my voice squeaks, this is a good omen. I thought we would just start and have each of the panelists tell us how they got into fish keeping and see if that sparks some sort of conversation from you guys. If at any point you have a question that you would like to ask on any of the points we bring up, you can raise your hand, say your question, I can repeat it, or you can walk up to that mic, whatever you're most comfortable with. So we can just start with Larry. If you tell us, how did you first get into fish keeping?
Well, you know, I guess I was in grade 4, 9 years old, and my buddy had a tank, and I thought it was a great little hobby and kind of interesting and kind of a boy thing. We had fallen in the creek for a couple of years at that point on the way to school, on the way back, so my dad bought me a 5-gallon tank, and the rest is history. MTS started around, I don't know, late 60s, early 70s.
You're dating yourself, Larry.
Yeah, I am.
What about you, Joey? I know, you want me to answer your question for you?
I'm starting to feel like a broken record. I'm gonna have to start lying about how I got in the hobby, make it more interesting. You know, just the way most people get in the hobby, you walk by, walk by the pet store, you see a lot of fish, and get interested, inspired, you want one. My girlfriend got me one about 15 years ago. You know, and it just grew on me from there. I mean, the do-it-yourself aspect's always been a part of my hobby. However, it got really heavy for me when I wanted to get into stingrays and, you know, aged marijuana. Couldn't buy big tanks or big filtration or anything like that, so I had to start building it. That's pretty much it. It's kind of been looking forward to the future with it. That's about it.
Excellent. What about you, Shane?
Yeah, I guess kind of like Joey, I feel like I should make up some great story because you know there really isn't one. Got a tank, I guess when I was an undergrad in college was the first one, and started off actually with labyrinth fishes.
Oh yeah.
Did a lot of gouramis and betas for a year or two, and then started wondering what other fishes live with them, and then that kind of led to the catfish thing. My mom says, you know, why are you all into the catfish? And we had a tank when I was little, and her theory is because I was just tall enough to see the bottom of the tank, so I could see the quarries, and that was where my fixation came with it. The only things I could see as a little kid on the bottom of the tank.
I know that all three of you have had some unique obstacles, maybe because of where you've lived and how you've lived with your fish keeping. I know, for instance, that's what fueled a lot of Joey's projects. I know that you've lived overseas a lot, and I know, you know, being in Canada isn't always the easiest. Can you guys tell us just a little bit about how where you actually live has influenced the fish you keep and the path of your hobby?
Well, in southern Ontario, the water's, you know, the pH is reasonably high, around 7.8, and if you know, you're trying to do discus and other soft water fish, you really need an RO machine to help bring that down. Cichlids are very popular in Ontario, southern Ontario specifically, because of the water that we have there. Of course, it doesn't hurt that they're very, you know, colorful and everything else, but in my specific case, I'm out in the country, I use well water, and I mean, if it was any harder, you know, you could walk on it.
So that's what led you to your love of the cichlids, is
Yeah.
choosing something that would actually work with what you could provide?
Yeah, I mean, I started, when I lived in the city, I mean, I started the cichlids there, and I certainly didn't think it would be a problem doing that out in the country where I am now. We get into these dry spells for 2 or 3 years at a time. It's kind of challenging with the amount of water that I need to do water changes on a regular weekly basis. So, yeah, kind of wiggle and jiggle and thin things out through the summer when in the drier times. When it's not really that busy in the shops, everybody kind of takes a hiatus for the summer, and you know, there's not a lot of purchases, purchasing of fish being done, certainly in my place. I got guys coming up all the time, but things do slow down in the summer, so I can keep it a bit thin. And then I'm traveling to Malawi in the fall, so usually sometime after I come back, I ramp up things and I go until now. Like at this time of the year, you get into March, April, it's time to thin it out, to start thinning out.
Yep.
So that works out well for me.
Good. Now, I know Joey, you know, if any of you guys have watched his live streams, and obviously lots of his videos, we've heard him talk about, you know, obviously he's interested in these large fish, and that's what's fueled, you know, him learning how to build all these big aquariums, because he couldn't purchase them.
Yeah, availability and selection has always been a challenge. I never let that depict where my hobby was going to go or what fish I was truly passionate about. I'm all about, you know, keep the fish you truly want to keep, because at the end of the day, you're going to invest a lot of money into your hobby, a lot of time. You might as well make it worthwhile. But like Larry, I have very similar water, 7.6, 7.8. And along my hobby and my experience was, if it can't survive in my water, I just won't keep it. But I've never really had that problem with discus breeding or really anything, any fish, as long as it provided, you know, consistent water quality as opposed to chasing numbers. And it's proven successful. But being where I'm from, it's all about availability and selection. If you want a 10-gallon tank from Walmart and some guppies, you will have a fun time in my town. You want anything else? Good luck.
Right. And I know Shane has even more unique obstacles because he's lived all over the world, often for prolonged periods, which is interesting because you get to go see the fish in their natural habitat, but it certainly changes what you can do. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I guess what's probably very different from most folks is I tear down my fish and they'll move every 2 years. So that's 20 some odd tanks. Every tank has a pre-built crate. Every tank is packed with its driftwood, its substrate, its filtration, its lighting, heaters, everything is built to go in together. And then I've got a giant stack of wooden crates. Every tank has its individual wooden crate, and every 2 years we move to a new country. And then I get out and collect all new fish. So my fish and fish availability is a different thing, right? It's what I can get out and catch rather than what's available in the store.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions so far? Yes.
How would you recommend transporting fish across the country? What is the best method to do that, cheapest?
Like, just ship them, or?
So, would you recommend like shipping them across the country and then going over there with the rest of the stuff, or bringing them with everything else? Like, what do you recommend?
Yeah, so actually, Rachel probably could speak to shipping fish. I get rid of all my fish every 2 years and start over again.
Oh, so you don't.
Yeah.
As far as me for doing transportation like that, I think that it's best when you're moving to treat it like you are shipping the fish, even if you're taking them with you. A lot of times, it depends on the size of the fish. If you're working with like really big cichlids or things like that, you know, fish boxes with some sort of aeration is nice. But if you're working with anything that's, you know, more average sized, I think it's best to just bag them up, use a lot of you know, paper and stuff so that they don't get jostled as much. Keep them dark, keep them calm, you know, and move them that way. If you're driving, like if you're moving across the country or whatever.
But I will say one aspect maybe that's different about the way I do it, because I catch fish or live different places. I have a hard time, I think, sometimes understanding the value or the cost of fishes that people buy, because to me there's no inherent cost to something they can go get out of a creek. So having a different price on it doesn't really make sense to me. And I get it, right? Because if you can't travel to that place to get the fish and bring it home, then you're basically paying somebody else to have done that for you.
Does anybody else have any questions so far? Don't be shy, folks. All right, well then I want to know, like, how did you guys, I know all of you have been heavily involved in clubs at various points, and obviously that's how we all ended up here. You know, who's been the biggest person that influenced you, and how did you discover your club initially?
Starting off with me again.
Well, we can start off with Shane.
Yeah, so I guess the big initial, actually it's kind of funny, we were talking about this last night. Obviously Lee Finley, anyone who's been around the catfish scene for any amount of time. When I was first really getting into catfish, Lee was pretty much, and Ginny Eckstein was another name. There were only a couple of names. This is before L numbers, this is before all this stuff. And I was laughing because Lee Finley and I used to write letters back and forth. You know, have you seen this fish? Do you have this problem? Have you ever had to solve this? And then I'd wait 4 weeks for a letter back from Lee.
So hopefully it was nothing critical.
But how different that is now, right, with the internet and even going further than the internet with the stuff Joey and Rachel are doing with streaming and live stuff, you know, compared to waiting for letters to go back and forth. And in terms of clubs, PVAS especially, which has been around a long time. When we're living back in the States, that's the club I'm mostly associated with, and then Capital Cichlid for the last several years as well, are kind of what I would consider my home clubs. And then I always have stayed involved in NANFA. If you're not involved with NANFA, no matter what your specialty is or what you keep, I think every aquarium should have an association. That's the North American Native Fishes Association. They do a lot of collecting trips. You know, you don't have to save up and get to Brazil to do your first collecting trip. You can get together with your local NANFA chapter. They have all the equipment. They have everything you need. And, you know, even if you're not interested in bringing the natives back, get out there and learn how to use the equipment, see how it's done. It's still a fantastic experience. You can have as much fun, you know, collecting cyprinids in a creek in Virginia as you can going someplace far away.
And their website and Facebook page is really useful if you do, like I know for instance, with my children, we spend a lot of time climbing around creeks, figuring out what's in your local waters. Sometimes it's kind of neat to know that stuff, so that's cool.
What was the question?
How did you discover your aquarium club, and like who do you feel influenced you the most in that regard?
Well, first and foremost, this is the only club I'm a member of in the world. CCA, it's the only club I've ever paid for to be a member of. I discovered my local club through the internet. You know, internet just changed the face of the hobby and advanced it so quickly. But as soon as I found my club, the number one feeling that I always had about it was excitement. Discovering so many other people that were just like me.
Getting your geek on.
Yeah, it was incredible that I can go and hang out with these people and they're not going to laugh at me.
Sometimes they still laugh at me, Joey.
In terms of influence, I don't really feel as though I've been influenced as much as a person as opposed to emotion and vision. I've always thought, from a club standpoint, we could do more. We could get more people in the hobby. We could grow bigger, and you know, do more for the local hobby. So there was nobody really with that much drive. Because I was relatively newer, only spent a few years with the club, and again, it just came back to excitement and passion. But in terms of like what I'm doing today and fast forwarding a little bit, still, I don't really feel as though I'm being influenced. I feel as though I'm setting, I focus more on setting precedents and leading, and I stumble and I fall a lot, but every once in a while I'll do something successful that might inspire somebody to kind of follow along. Yeah.
It's a good mindset. How about you, Larry?
Well, you know, going back to those days when I was in grade 4, and you know, in a tank, and my other buddy, he had a 10-gallon, I had a 5-gallon, you know, so there was always a bit of a competition there. And so there's an aquarium club, so we started going to the aquarium club as young kids. And then of course you get to a certain age where, well, it kind of gets, I still had the fish, but I wasn't going to the club because it was hard as a, you know, 12 or 13 to out in the country to get into the city and go. But certainly when I got older, I picked it up again around my late teens, early 20s, and I've been a member of the club ever since. And of course, every time I go somewhere and I speak, they usually give you a membership. So I belong to all sorts.
I'm a member of like 35 clubs or something ridiculous.
Or, you know, the usual, when you get on Facebook and you're looking at some of these clubs and then somebody else adds you, or they want to be your friend and they add you to their groups.
Yes.
3 or 4 times a day or a week. So So it's fun.
To just follow up with that, the reason why I'm not involved in my local clubs anymore is I did it for years, a lot of years, and being in the organized side of the hobby requires a tremendous amount of your personal time, and it's one of the most thankless jobs you'll ever do. You really have to have a good heart to be doing it. So I like to thank the people that run this club every time I come, because I truly understand from your perspective what you're really sacrificing in terms of your personal resources and time, and I don't think you guys get thanked enough. So thank you for doing everything you guys.
On that note, all the people that put this on are the ones that don't get to sit in here and enjoy the presentations. They don't get to go to hospitality because they're setting up the showfish and everything. So it's really a big sacrifice, and it's generally, you know, less than 10 people that make these things happen.
It's
You know,
the
that's the
enthusiasm.
core of the work.
It's the enthusiasm here.
Yeah.
I see that, yeah.
It's great. So we all have a bunch of tanks. What do you guys think is the most sort of valuable time-saving or best tip that you have for maintaining multiple aquariums? I would imagine that most people in the room are probably have several tanks or are dreaming about getting more.
I'll start. So for me, I've been running drip systems for about 10 years. If you're not familiar with a drip system, it's a continuous water change essentially. They used to use them in public aquariums a lot. If they were situated near oceans, they'd have flow-through systems. And so you're continuously adding water at a dripping rate, and it's overflowing. In a lot of cases, this can eliminate water changes completely depending on how fast you're flowing the water and you're stocking. However, for the most part, the biggest benefits is it prolongs the water changes and it provides consistency as opposed to doing irregular water changes, whereas your nitrates, for example, will climb. You do a water change, they drop. They climb, they drop. So you're constantly like this. With the drip system, it's more consistent. They rise very slowly over time, and then you can do a big water change, they'll drop, but then they rise very slowly. So for me, it saves a tremendous amount of time. I spend more time enjoying my fish, less time taking care of them. So that's been a big thing for me. There's other things, but that's the number one for me. To highly suggest you do if you can plumb it and if you have a drain of some sort.
Excellent. What about you, Shane?
I actually have 2 tips. Because I move all the time, I can't do like the proper fish room and install plumbing and do all this kind of stuff. So the system I've come up with is, you see a lot of cleaning people, the 55-gallon kind of drum on 4 wheels that you'll see go around and getting trash. I took one of those, poked a hole in the bottom, mounted about 30 feet of hose, and I run that hose out the back door of the fish room, and then I just drag that around the fish room and empty all the tanks into it. It's so much easier than carrying buckets everywhere. And then all the water just goes out into the backyard and waters the backyard.
I'm gonna steal that.
Not if I steal it first.
But if you can't really do that proper plumbing, it's as close as you're going to get. And then the second one, and I can't believe, I probably shouldn't say this because I should probably market it. If you go to Home Depot, they sell, it's a plastic U, and it's meant for you to put your cords and wires behind your washer and dryer so that when you
hang your...
so when you push the washer and dryer back, they don't get kinked. It fits exactly on your Python nose spill, and you can just hang that thing on the tanks. So while I'm walking around with my garbage bucket draining, I've got the Python hanging off the edge of each tank, and I'm filling behind myself.
That way it doesn't fall and you don't flood the floor
Right.
like
we've all done.
some of us have done. Yes. How about you, Larry?
I got a 1-inch siphon hose, and I fill right from the tap with a garden hose. I got a do-it-yourself ball valve hang on the tank set up, so I start off with I work about 3 tanks down. I don't have any gravel to worry about, and I can turn on the ball valve. The tanks are filling behind me as I'm draining. If I start to run out of water, I can just shut it off, keep draining, and then get caught up. So it's just it's a matter of balance, right?
Right.
The water going out, water going in. My fish are in the basement. I got a big sump hole. I don't have to worry about the tanks overflowing because everything has a bulkhead, and it runs to the hard line plumbing runs to the sump hole. So if I want to just like I have new fish and I don't want to do a lot of water change, I can just hang the hose on the tank, turn it on, give them 2 minutes, go to tank to tank to tank, or else I can actually vacuum the bottom out. And if I walk away from the tank, and I won't get any water on the floor. So there's no more golden faucet award.
Excellent. No more Grammy Award in your house. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, for the ones that do the drip systems and the stuff like that, on city water, how would you treat the water before it gets in your tank?
So the question was, if you run a drip system, how do you, and you have city water, how do you manage that?
You're dripping at such a low rate that it's really easy to treat it as opposed to, straight from the tap. So you can do something as simple as fill a water bottle up with some carbon, drip the water through that. As it slowly drips through, it's going to remove the chlorine. It's really, really
And
easy.
what, put the thing with the carbon then into the tank?
Yeah, through the carbon then the tank. You can also get inline house filters where it's a carbon block filter. You can put that on it. You just incorporate carbon to some extent. They don't exhaust as quickly as you might think. However, if you do the water bottle thing and you're just using regular activated carbon, you can replace that pretty cheaply. And carbon is pretty cheap, but if you are on a house, and that's going to remove your chlorine. It's not really going to remove chloramine, so you have to address that separately or use a lot more carbon. But it's not that big of a challenge. It's more of an annoyance, but it can be done for sure.
Yes.
Yes, I know that, at least for me, one of my biggest frustrations is the catastrophic tank failure, where you come in when everything is belly up. So, what do you think is the best way to recover from that so you stay engaged in the hobby?
Alcohol. Just kidding. Just in general. Do you guys have any suggestions on?
Yeah, I've had lots of catastrophic failures. Of course, I mean, I have more failures than successes. I've had tanks explode in front of me. I've almost cut my fingers off. I've had fish die. And at the end of the day, these things are going to happen. You're not going to walk through your hobby the entire time with nothing ever going wrong. Equipment fails, heaters fail, filters fail, pumps turn off. Lights fall in your tank. Something's going to happen eventually, and you just have to understand that safety is number one. Protect your house and make sure that things are on GFCIs, for example, smoke detectors. But these are going to happen. I mean, and hopefully it doesn't. But you just have to be level-headed. Sometimes it's going to be catastrophic emotionally. You might spend your entire hobby and years working up to a certain animal, or you finally got a breeding pair and you've been trying to do this for years, and next thing you know, they're taken away from you. I can tell you from personal experience, it's devastating, and you will want to get out of the hobby. But you just gotta keep a clear head and understand that tomorrow's a new day. You can start over. Sometimes it's fun to start over. I mean, he just told me he starts every 2 years. I mean, that's pretty exciting to me.
That sounds exciting to me too.
All new fish, everything for every 2 years. I mean, I guess that's kind of sadistic to hope that your fish kind of dies. It just has a lot to do with personality, really, and how you handle it. I think that if you talk to somebody about it, if you share your emotions and your feelings with people. This just turned into like a Dr. Phil episode, but just understand that it's going to happen, and the best thing you can do is be prepared. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. So just kind of be ready and prepared.
And we've all been there. I think a lot of times when those things happen, people feel like embarrassed or ashamed or whatever. But the reality is like we've all killed fish or had it happen. So it really does. You're in a room full of people that are fish murderers.
Yeah.
So not
well
us
done
are
things
alone
we're never
in
going
that.
to say to it.
Yeah.
We'll say some things, but there's other things we just simply won't tell. But the biggest thing is that every mistake and every problem is a learning opportunity, and you can embrace it or you can run from it. I choose to embrace it as much as I can. Although depending on my mood that day, I might drop kick the tank, or I might be okay with it. But ultimately, it's just going to happen. Be ready.
Excellent. Anyone else? I was recently on a podcast and they asked me a question that I thought was really fun. It was if you could have one size tank, one piece of decor, and one fish, and that was it for the rest of your life, what would it be? I said, I want like a 120-gallon tank, with some really nice driftwood and white cloud minnows. I'd like to hear what you guys would choose if you had to limit it to just those things.
Easy. Like I said, I do exactly what I want to do. So I would have, and I will have, in the next couple months, a 2,200 gallon cement tank with a front viewing panel. In it will be showcased black diamond stingrays. If I had to have one piece of decor, it would probably be a massive piece of Malaysian driftwood that's elevated slightly off of the ground, so there's room under it, but I want to have a dubious or some sort of aquatic plant on it. And so if I could have only one tank, it would definitely be that one, and I will have that one.
I know it. I can't wait to see it. What about you, Larry? It's a tough question, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, yeah, large tank any size with one big rock and, you know, a bunch of African cichlids in it. Trying to pick just one is pretty hard because there's a lot of choices.
Makes your brain ache.
You Malawi or Tanganyika?
Just Malawi. Just Malawi, yeah. So it's kind of hard, you know, you can pick one peacock, you can pick one autopharynx.
That would be good.
You know.
Now, I know Shane's would just look like an empty tank because he'd pick a catfish that would hide in his decor, but I still like to hear it.
Yeah, I really have to give that one some hard thought as to what catfish. But then again, I'll say there's another side of me. I think to like every fish room I've set up and the fish I collect, and a fish that just always finds its way into my fish room is a pair of cribs.
Yep, that's a smart
a 20-gallon tank with a mated pair of cribs and fry every month or so. That could entertain me for many, many years.
Yeah, I always keep them in my fish room as well, no matter what. I think I'm getting out of it, and then the next thing I know,
Yeah,
they're back.
they come back
Taking
again.
false hits. Excellent. Do you guys have any questions?
When's the next trip to Malawi?
When's the next trip to Malawi? I believe you're going this fall, aren't you?
Yeah, I think October the 23rd.
Excellent.
It's earlier than that, yeah.
Now, I've never gone collecting overseas. You know, I think it sounds really exciting and it sounds really interesting. I don't believe you have either, right, Joey?
What's that?
Gone collecting?
What's a cute comment I can make? No, I'll just say
No.
no.
So I know these two both have extensively. So one of the things I wanted to ask is, what do you think is the best way to do one of those trips? What do you guys recommend as far as, who to go with and how to be prepared for them?
I think you have to kind of follow the lead and go with somebody that's been going before. Certainly the first time I went was with Konings and the rest of the crazy Canadians. And once you work out your routing, how to get there and what you got to do, certainly things get modified over the years. It's a lot easier to get where we're going now with one stopover in Ethiopia from Toronto. So, but you go with somebody because he's going to show you all the cool things, the cool spots. I could go down to where Shane was, and I could flounder around for weeks to find his first spot. But if I went with Shane, he knows all the cool spots to start off with. So he moves on to some other part of the world. You can take over this little trip and get your friends to go with you, and you can show them around down there. So it's always important to follow along for the first couple of trips.
And I know I've heard Shane say in previous presentations that what he generally does is reach out to the local kids that are hanging out in the creeks to find the spots.
Best guide in the world is a 12-year-old boy. He knows how to catch anything within a mile of his house.
With a piece of string.
But yeah, from what Larry said, and this is kind of my presentation, hopefully those of you that make it tonight, is really on the whole planning and execution of an expedition and everything that goes into it. And I don't think people realize often how much goes into it. And as Larry said, without the right person, it's almost impossible. And not just the right person, if you go collecting with me, right, and we're in, Colombia, then I speak Spanish. And if we cross into Brazil, I can get by in Portuguese. And if we cross, and you've got maybe know a few words of the local indigenous languages, a few words of Quechua or Aymara to get by with the Indians. So all of that stuff, that's not even fish stuff you have to learn, so you can go do fish stuff, right?
And then there's the vaccines and all those sorts of things. We had a question there. Yes, sir?
Yeah, talking about a 12-year-old child. When I was like 10, I used to have a creek right down before my parents' house. And I used to go down there after school and just spend my time down at the I catch every fish you want.
That's the best. I mean, I still do that.
One thing I'd like to share with you, like you said, you catch it with a string. I would actually experiment with how to catch fish. How can I catch more fish? I watch them in the deep spots where the bass are big and the sunnies. And I take those and go under this rock. As a child, I go out there under the rock, I found no way under the rock. It's just one way, so I'd wait till they went under there. I put my foot there or something, I'd catch them by my hands, throw them over the bank.
That's fun.
So one day I went down there, it was 12-inch pipe. Someone put like 4-inch pipes down there, They were putting a wire up around the baseball field. And I got some great idea, we got to throw that pipe in because they go in that, under that rock.
Yeah, and then you can just lift it out.
So then I got a net, because my arms weren't long enough to get both ends and put my hands on. So I put a net on the one side, my hands on the other side. I got it with the bank. I caught every fish in the creek.
That's fun.
Even these big eels were in there. They went in that pipe too.
So
That's pretty cool.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask you a question. How do you guys think generally the hobby is doing, especially with the youth, to try to get them more involved in the hobby? I know it comes from us adults, but I'd just like to hear some feedback from you guys on that.
Yeah, it's actually, we were talking a little bit about this last night. From, I think, and I'm not certainly part of the first wave, and I'm not even part of the second wave, but I think I came in probably a little bit before, right? Larry and I came into the hobby more around the same time, pre-internet hobby, right? I used to come and do these conventions, and I brought all my slide carousels, and there was no laptops, there was no...
you load them all upside down.
You have to have your presentation, and one's backwards and upside down. So the technology's changed, and then the internet has just changed everything. When Jules and I got started doing Planet Catfish, it was originally .catfish, because when we started it, there wasn't even the .com system. There was just whatever you wanted, and our site was .catfish, which we sold later for money. But it's the technology and seeing it go from the early internet, right, where we were all writing articles and posting pictures, and it was very much it was an internet like an encyclopedia. You could look stuff up, but there was no interaction. And then kind of how the forums came, and suddenly and there were multi-user chat rooms, the old MUD system, if you guys remember those, we used to use. But they weren't that interactive. You had a time being on at the exact same time together. You had to get on the same server at the same time. And then seeing it go through the kind of forum phase, and then now seeing, stuff that, like Joey and Rachel do, that's the whole next gen of completely live, interactive, that's beyond that. And these guys could speak to that new technology because, I'm kind of still back on forums.
And I do think that that's really the way that you get the current generation engaged is, to speak their language. You can't expect for kids to want to come out and sit in a big lecture room. You can't expect them to know that it's happening if you're not reaching them from the formats that they utilize. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that clubs make is not utilizing social media better, even as just a way for people to know. You've got to create a buzz for people to see it, and you have to do it in the places that they're looking.
I think the hobby's in trouble. I feel pretty strongly about this. I think over the past few years, the hobby's advanced extremely quickly with the assistance of the internet, but over the past few years, social media has dominated everything. I think that people like myself, even yourself, and anybody that picks up a camera or has a Facebook page gives off the illusion of expertise as they're filming alone with confidence. They're not being checked. They're not being, reviewed by their peers. And because of this, when new people come into the hobby, they have no clue if this person knows what they're talking about or not, so they look at numbers. You look at my numbers and you think, wow, this guy must know what he's talking about. You don't know that because you're new to the hobby and you have no clue. You don't know who to trust or who to believe. And because of this is why I think the hobby's in trouble. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I'm sure you guys wrote books, club meetings, and that's how you communicated. And you got really good information out there. Then forums came along. Still, good discussions, people could be checked, it was a discussion. Now we're in the age of standalone social media, where you have guys like me that's alone on the camera, educating millions and millions of people. And I don't think I should be that popular. I'm not that good. These guys should be doing it, but is it a little too late in the game? I don't know. I think that if you are a legend in the hobby like these two gentlemen are, pick up a camera, please. Get on social media more, please. The future of the hobby is doomed because we've got idiots out there with the cameras that are spewing out filth and garbage, unchecked, doing well for themselves. And imagine where we're going to be in 5 years.
I know, and the stigma that a lot of the established, speakers or club organizers have against giving that information in a format is a really big problem, because we need people to educate in the way that we can, and there's absolutely no reason that...
Just to follow up here, a couple of years ago I noticed this trend. I've seen this coming. That's why I approached you. I know you were well organized in the hobby, and I called you the key. I figured if I can get you started, you'll influence others within the organized hobby to start following in your footsteps. And that's happened tremendously. But on that same note, that's another big reason why I come to these events in the first place. I would much rather be at home with my family, enjoying my days together with them, as opposed to traveling and leaving with them. But I feel as though I have a duty and a responsibility with the following that I have to bring attention to things like these and bring them to the forefront and not let them, to die out, because it's coming. It's coming. And we're in big trouble if and I know a lot of you don't even know where to start. Where do I even begin? You don't have to know, you just have to start. If you need help, I will help you. Help a lot of people get started with this stuff. I'm begging you to do something, and please don't let people like me dominate this hobby, because we're doomed if that happens.
Yes, Mr. Buck.
Joey, before my question, don't be too hard on yourself. You do a good job. I like your videos. I think most people here do. The other point to keep in mind when you're watching YouTube and learning something from YouTube, there are a lot of videos. You can scan them pretty quick and figure things out.
True. You can. But somebody that's new to the hobby and just got into the hobby has no clue.
And I think people want that immediacy of information and the easiness. People don't want to look on books. They don't want to Google answers. They don't want to do that. They just want to find it and have someone tell them.
You got to check your sources.
Yeah, you've got to check yourself.
Yeah, that sort of goes off on another note with just information in general. That in this, not just in this hobby, but in most sources of information, it's very easy to get a lot of information very fast. And if you don't practice good research techniques and you don't try to routinely check that information, you're going to end up having a bad time.
Yeah, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Yeah, but nobody goes to the library anymore. Nobody's forums are dying out for the most part. There's nowhere to check this information. Facebook and YouTube and Instagram is the platforms that the eyes and ears of this generation of hobbyists are spending their time. Simple as that. Where do you check your source resources? I wouldn't know. If I got into the hobby right now, I wouldn't think about going to the library and picking up a book. I'd just jump on Facebook. How my platy stopped eating, what do I do? And get a response from somebody that probably has no clue what they're talking about, perhaps. But how do you check those? How do you check that? How do you check that information? How do you even know to check that information? And if you haven't noticed, there's so many things in the hobby that catch fire, and they spread like wildfire, because we can communicate so freely now. And a lot of the times it's just misinformation. Maybe it's wrong, maybe it's not the best information, but this is something I'm just entirely passionate about. I just see it coming. I see it coming. I seen the social media taking over a while ago. I knew that we were going to have influencers in this hobby, and we're going to have individuals with massive followings. I seen this like 7 years ago. I knew this was happening. And I see what's happening now, and that's like these guys don't deserve to be drowned out, but they are going to be drowned out. And it's just something I worry about. It's something I think about all the time. And I don't want the responsibility of being the only one that, not the only one clearly, but the only one that kind of feels this way. But the days are numbered in terms of like where the hobby's going to be in 3 to 5 years. Look at what's happened over the past 15 years, how fast we've advanced. Look at the past 3 years. I was nobody. Nobody in this room would have known who I was 3 years ago. Nobody. Now 66 million people have seen my face. Sorry. But just to put that into perspective.
You guys remarked about getting on YouTube. For CATSA, I would probably never actually get my act together to actually do it, but if I wanted to, how would I get started with a YouTube channel?
Look at technology these days. We've got cameras with 4K resolution. Pick up your cell phone. I'm not saying you have to create a YouTube channel and become...
I'm just going to point out, notice I don't even have a cell phone, nor does Larry.
So like I said, we're in for some trouble.
I had one once, but I had to give it back when I left the job.
Yeah, it's you know, anybody can get started, anybody can do something, and it feels like I'm asking a lot and putting a pressure on a lot of people. But this is a room of like 100 or 200 people. You know, all I have to do is inspire one of you to do it, to one of you to get started, one of you to become more active in terms of, you know, creating some form of content that will, you know, help drown out the rest.
What about you, Rachel? How should I get started? How should I start my YouTube channel?
Well, I'll come down and help you, Bob.
Okay.
I mean, I'm serious. I'd come down and sit down with you and show you how it works. Joey had to hold my hand for the whole first year.
Hold your hand? That was not holding your hand. That was, you were at gunpoint.
Yes, it was. He made me get started. You know, I had absolutely no interest in talking to myself on camera. You know, it made me feel like a real fool. And I was like, you know, why? I write articles, I write books, I travel to lecture. And I guess what I've learned the most is, you know, I can reach, I mean, my numbers are nowhere near his, but I reached 25,000 hobbyists a day when I was traveling every other weekend all over the country and the world to reach maybe 10,000 people a year. So, you know, that seeing that I could really provide this information to people, you know, in a quick, easy, understandable format was super fun, and I actually really love it. And it's not that hard, you know. Basically, Bob, all you need is a computer and some sort of camera and a plan. You know, if you want to talk about something on camera, if you want to educate about something, come up with a little like timeline of what you want to talk about.
Talk about whatever you're excited about. Forget a plan. Talk about what you're excited about at the time. Passion trumps everything.
That's
if you're not passionate about something, if you're not excited about something, don't expect the other people watching or reading or however you're doing it to be as excited. Don't feel forced. Everything's natural. Of course, if you want to get specific and create a schedule, an upload schedule, consistency, maybe you start getting into creating storyboards, etc., etc. You don't have to do all that. It just takes one step at a time. I mean, that's what I did. I've posted a few videos, and over the past 8 years, I learned how to edit, I learned how to talk better, I learned how to present better.
Yeah, your stuff is really professional.
It wasn't. Even if you go back 7 years, have fun with that.
Those were the best.
Hey guys, so today we're gonna
That's what it was.
I want to say I think there's been times where I've felt the organized hobby was on a downturn, and then there's been times when I felt it was on an upturn. And I think for a long time the kind of clubs were aging out. For those of you familiar with like the Catfish Study Group in Britain, you know, I go there and I'm a kid, you know, talking to 70-year-old men with gravy on their tie. And that's not, you know, the clubs can't age out that way, right? And they've got to reach out and they've got to recruit the next generation and they've got to have activities. It can't just be like the same old, you know, 25 old white guys that have been meeting every Sunday for 30 years. You know, you've got to reach out, you've got to bring in the next generation, you've got to create an inclusive, open environment that people want to come be a part of. And I think CCA is one of the great clubs at that. When Rachel asked last night how many people were here for the first time.
It was like a third of you, and you know, it made my inner geek sing.
Yeah, it made me really happy too. I love to see when new people come, and you know, I always love to see all my old friends that are out here, but I love to see the new people.
Yes.
So to Rachel and Joey, what tools do you use to create your videos?
Well, Joey's much. I'm very basic.
I thought I was so fancy when I got my first camcorder. I thought I was Steven Spielberg. You don't.
How do you edit a video?
I use free Windows Movie Maker.
I mean, today we're fast forwarding to the end of where I'm at now. I'm using Final Cut Pro to edit. I use Canon 70D as a main camera. G7X for like a vlogging camera. I got a Mavic Pro, GoPros, all types of different types of filming equipment and lights and microphones, etc. But I started off with it was like a $150 point and shoot, and then I got a camcorder, which was like $200. And then I bought my first DSLR by avoiding a car payment so I could make better videos. And then one day I heard beep, beep, beep. Had my car towed. These are real stories. And work with what you got, and you'll get better with time, and you'll learn more, and you'll upgrade your equipment. But ultimately, it's the story you're telling and the content you're filming that makes the video. Turn some lights on. Lighting is important, and so is audio. Just make sure they can hear you and see it. And other than that, I mean, it's 2017, and there's so many good cameras and phones, and everything's so available and cost-effective. You can start with anything.
I just use an SLR because that's what I have for taking, selling photographs and it's really, my camera is extremely inconvenient for YouTube, but it's what I have. And like you said, as, things progress and I upgrade and change, that'll happen, but you don't have to have anything in particular. Yes?
Since we're talking about equipment, Larry, I wanted to ask you what you use to take the pictures out at Lake Mullen.
Well, it's getting kind of old now. It's Nikon D200 and a CNC housing with double stroke flash. I'm kind of missing underwater video, so I've added a GoPro this last year, but I gotta upgrade my program on my computer because it won't let me run the GoPro program to download the pictures. So I got 60 gigs of videos sitting on my camera still that I can only play on my TV at home.
There's
for my private viewing, yes.
What are the odds of a group like you getting together? I mean, we've got 2 superstars and 2 legends.
We're together right
When
now.
are we going to see?
Look at what you got for $35.
When are we going to see Joey in Africa with Larry?
I guess that could happen.
Making a video. That would be awesome.
He doesn't flirt enough. Are you talking like an expedition? I would go to Tanganyika before Malawi. I mean, that's how you even say it. I'm more attracted to those fish of that lake as opposed to Malawi, so the chances of it happening are there. There's a chance. But I'd rather go to South America.
I'd rather go to South America
Jane,
too.
and he can collect his catfish, and I'll go look at some stingrays and discus and arowanas and the water monkeys down there. And
from my perspective, I turn 40 next year, and I really want to do a collecting trip, and I want to go with a bunch of friends. So. And most of my friends are my peers who also lecture and write and stuff. So there's a very good possibility you'll see that from me at some point.
I just think something like that would bridge that gap between the kind of pre-internet bunch and where we're at.
I've got some things planned. I'm discussing a trip to China and Malaysia right now. We're going to go look at the discus farms, Asian arowana farms, the stingray farms. Those things are what excite me. But if I were to go on a collecting trip or some sort of an expedition, it would definitely be to South America first. From there, it would probably be Africa. I think Malawi would be interesting, but it's all about the experience. I don't plan to export, I'd probably catch some stuff, but it would all be about bringing it back for everybody else to see and enjoy, as opposed for me to have any personal gains as I would just want to experience it. But it takes a tremendous amount of time and to do these things, and when I've researched it, I'm investing 10, 12 days into it. I can always make more money, but I can never make more time, and time is my most valuable asset right now, and I think maybe next year I could take it more seriously, but right now it's just not in the plans, especially with what's coming, and you guys will find that out in a few hours.
Excellent. Yes?
Myself, I have a 360 camera, Joey. I didn't know if you're going to do any more videos or trying to get new equipment to do more 360 maybe VR experience now, or that's a big right now.
I think it's great technology. I don't think it's going to catch on in the hobby. I've done the VR. I've done tank builds in VR, not VR, but 360, so you control it and watch me build the whole thing. The camera was inside. I've done underwater 360. those videos were interesting, but more of a novelty. I don't think people truly want to experience videos like that. They want to be narrated through a video and shown things, because a lot of the times, and a lot of the comments I've gotten where they don't even know what to look at.
That's what I struggled with when I watched.
Yeah, what do I do? What do I look at? And it's really cool and interesting, but it's more so for like maybe a 360 in Malawi or something like that. 360 pictures are really well. But that technology has come a long way. I got my first 360-degree camera, I think it was 2 years ago, and the quality was horrible. They've definitely, on a consumer level, you can get them for $500-600. So that's interesting. Next trip you guys get, if you want 360 camera, I'll ship you my camera. You just can use it. You can get some really cool. I think you're next. So really cool, interesting shots. I know I'm not going to do it, and I don't plan to use it anymore, but I don't think it's going to catch on. I just don't.
Excellent. Yes?
How do you guys feel about the fish keeping hobby as a whole?
How do
As in, are there more fish keepers now, or has it been trending down? Back when I was in California about 20 years ago, there was a lot of local fish stores, and it seems like they've been closing.
It's e-commerce, the evolution of the current day. I mean, a lot of stores haven't changed with times. What I've found personally is that a lot of stores have a sense of entitlement because they exist. You should shop there. They don't want to change or evolve or give you a reason that you should be shopping there as opposed to online. Now, there's a lot of benefits to shopping in a local fish store, and I prefer to walk into a store as opposed to online, but I think that's the number one reason, e-commerce, a lot of online stores. As in comparison to, like, is there more hobbyists these days? The population's always increasing. There's probably more hobbyists. I can say that numbers are increasing across the board in terms of what I've seen in my analytics, but I think that, I think that's all I had there. I think it's increasing, it's more popular.
Yeah, I can't say if it's going up or down. When I lived in DC in the late 90s, the first time I moved out here, there were so many awesome fish stores in this area. I mean, you could get up on a Saturday and drive to Randallstown, all these great shops. I would drive up to Lancaster to go to the store up there, and that was like a weekend ritual. I don't do that anymore. There's no more fish stores to go to. I'm not going to drive all the way to Lancaster to look at
one store
that may or may not have anything I even care about anymore, because they're not importing the way they used to.
Because that's not where people need to go to get the new stuff, or they're not providing the new stuff that makes people keep going.
Right. And I will, and it's probably not a popular thing to say, but Joey's dead right, is we watched the fish stores go out of business, and I sat there with these old guys that bitched to me, I can't sell cherry bars for less than $1, and Petco's got them for 50 cents. Why are you selling cherry bars? You should be selling L127s at $100 a piece, because Petco's never going to do that. I can't beat Petco. They got a $1 a gallon sell. Why are you selling 10-gallon tanks? You should be selling Amano CO2 systems. The PetSmart's never going to carry. And these guys just complained and complained as they went out of business and stuck to a business model they had known for 30 years and couldn't adapt.
Right.
Times change, your business needs to change with it, or you will go out of business.
Yes, Christian?
What are your thoughts on people like Takashi Amano and Dennis Wong?
What are their thoughts on people like Takashi Amano and Dennis Wong?
Yeah, like what was their impact on the hobby?
Their impact on the hobby? Yeah. I mean, I think Amano's impact is
global. You're comparing apples and oranges. A relatively unknown guy to a legend, an absolute legend in Takashi Amano. He's inspired me in a number of ways, and I don't even have planted tanks that will ever compare to that. Or do I have an interest, but he's entirely inspirational. I mean, we have CO2 in aquariums because of him. He's probably one of the most influential hobbyists of all time. I don't want to call him a hobbyist anymore, but not because he's passed, but he's his own. Yeah, that's something to aspire to, is to become so influential and to have a real impact.
He's a household name in
the hobby. But I think that's what a lot of hobbyists strive for, is to have an actual impact and create a legacy. like he has, but I don't think anybody ever will do something like that again. I think there's a lot of big names, but nobody will be as big as his impact has been. I don't think.
But he did so many innovations and, changed the, framework. One last question, then we have to wrap up so that we can do the demo. Yes?
For Shane, you said you move every 2 years or so. What do you do with those fish? Do you sell them? Do you donate them?
It really depends where I am, but nothing caught ever goes back. I never do that. And I hate to say it, even at times if that's meant destroying animals. Because you're going to bring them into your fish room, you're going to mix them with other tanks, they're going to be exposed to species from different, you don't go putting that stuff back. But for the most part, friends, pet stores, there's always people willing to take things. Friends come down and visit, and I say, look, I'm leaving in 6 months, pick anything in the fish room you want and bag it up.
You've done that to me.
Done that to Rachel. So I've never had a problem rehousing fish. And it is great. It's great to start over and start with different things. The downside of it, though, is I also envy those guys where I go to their fish room and they're like, these are my Synodontis eucterus. I bought them in 1972. Like, I'm never going to get that, right?
Well, I just want to thank all of you for participating, but most especially our panelists. I think this was a fun conversation. So thank you very much, and stay close by so we can have the demo.
Wow, that was a pretty interesting panel, but what did you think? Just leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought about it. That's it for the big fish still footage. That's all I got, folks, and that's all I got for this week. I'll be back next week with a regular schedule. We're going to figure out something fun to do. Until next time, follow your bliss, keep a clean tank, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.